Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is this, the Alfa Romeo GTV6 2.5 litre. This is the example 1983. If you're similar age to me, this was a big hero car in its era. The GTV looked fresh when it first came out. We all loved Alfa Romeos, all car enthusiasts around then. And we moved from the 105, I had that 2 litre version, previous version rounded, and that was doing great things on track. And then in 1974, Giugiaro design, this came out from Alfa Romeo, this GTV. First of all in 1.8 litre form, and then 2 litre, and then 1980 V6 form. And it was recognisable by a hump on the bonnet, instantly a cult car. Also around this time was the Ford Capri 2.8i, and BMW were just making a mark with a 325i. So injection was the name of the game, and this was injected. And I always, with these sort of cars, when I get them in, I always just check back on my old car magazines, and I just wanted to see as a reference point what car magazines said in their very famous Good, Bad and Ugly. Well, it was interesting, adequate and boring in these days. And I was shocked to find it wasn't listed in interesting. And I thought, oh, it's because I've got a 1985 magazine. And I just checked adequate. And they actually listed this Alfa under adequate, not interesting. So I had to delve a bit deeper. And they say, lovely engine, lively 4-cylinder performance, spectacular with V6, lots of character. Chassis has good balance, ride and grip. Against indifferent economy, both cars, gear change, cramped in rear, Alfetta funny steering. Sum up, charismatic GT cars, good at long distances. Had to get one in. Farmer friend up the road bought this one a couple of years ago. I mean, itching to have a go in it. So here it is, let's go and have a closer look. First thing that struck me when I picked this car up is how tiny it is, especially it's so narrow across here. I almost thought it was the Alfa Sud Sprint when I first saw it. And it was, when I looked at the spec on it, it's 1665mm wide, this car, just over 5 foot. That puts it on par with today's Fiat Panda, or a Fiesta or Ford Fiesta or something like that. But it's a great start. So those typical 2 quad lights, the grille shrunken, and quite a deep air dam on the 2.5 you see down here. It was the era when plastic was taken over from chrome trim. So the Alfa are very proud of all this trim down here, slight sill extension coming around here as well. It's not got the standard wheels on this car, unfortunately. And this little trim here, it used to say GTV on the earlier models, now it's just this vent, but the black trim as well. It just looked the part and looked exciting on the road, and it was a V6. So all in all, enthusiasts just loved these cars, and it actually sold pretty well. But its most distinctive feature was, of course, this power bulb. Basically, the V6 didn't fit underneath. It had been in an Alfetta saloon or something up to now with carburetors, Dell'Orto carburetors, a bit like the Countach, stacked on top of the V6. There was no room here, so when they went injection, they could finally fit it into the GTV, but they still had to increase the bonnet, this bulge here, and this strange panel here. Again in plastic. Let's go and have a look underneath. There is the famous Busso V6. There isn't that much to see here. Intake comes around here. This is the air intake here, the V6 sitting down below. It wasn't ribbed at this stage, it was only 2 valve per cylinder, etc., 2.5. But it's what it did, and what it did it for the reputation of Alfa Romeo, and what it sounded like, as we'll get to see later. Just inside as well, I love the velour trim on here. We'll have a closer look at the interior in a moment. 2 decent sized rear seats. Another slight oddity is this rear window, which I couldn't work out what it does, but it does open. It does like this. It's got a turn handle inside for rear seated passengers. You'd think it might be electric, but yeah, a slightly odd design. And then round the back, there's this hatchback. Lift that up. You think it's going to be a hatchback and the seats fold down, but no, they don't. This hump here is actually where the fuel tank is, and I love this sort of central strut here. Never seen that before, and that sort of sits on top. So I'm not sure, yeah, you can take that out if you wanted. Decent sized boot as you used to get in those days. The battery's hidden down there as well. But yeah, what this car's all about is the way it drives. Let's take it outside now. Yeah, just before I get in, I just wanted to show you a few things. First of all, this car is in amazing condition. I checked underneath and it is smothered in barrel loads of under seal sort of anti-rust protection. And then in the other giveaway, if I just open the door, you'll see a little plug. This is something you used to do back in period, and it's when you used to find those plugs when they've injected sealant, rust protection all through the cavities. I can see another one here and another one there. You used to call it zeobarting. There's another one. And it just means that all the inner cavities of the car are protected, and they do it from new, and that's why this car is in such good condition. And then the seat, the velour trim. This was posh. This was, instead of having a sort of plastic trim, you had this velour trim as well, which actually works really nicely. And I also love this handle here. This is what makes it go up and down. It's on here, manual control. And then of course infamous electrics. And on this age of car, you used to get the electrics right to hand. So if I just do this, there we are. There are all the fuses. I don't know if you can see there, but all the fuses there displayed and relays up there. So the driver could make adjustments on the move. And then the final oddity of this car is this. It might have fuel injection, but it needs a sort of choke to start it from cold, which is like an added injector. Oh, here we go. One of the things I should point out, also down by the fuse box, there is the fog lights are down there, and there's a heated screen down here, but you can't see. All you can see is sort of orange buttons, but you can't actually see what they're for. It's only by getting in the footwell and looking up you can actually see what's on the buttons. Yeah, so Alfa, typical Alfa here. It's a slightly later model of GTV with the V6. You get this binnacle here that I can remember going in one early one, and you had a speedo in the middle. It was all very odd, just sitting there on its own, and then another binnacle in front of the driver, but they're completely separate. Yeah, it's all a bit of a memory lane looking at this. Yeah, electric windows on the V6, so those rocker switches here. What I can't get over, there's 3 blanks. Lord knows what they're for. I mean, it's not exactly poverty spec, this car, but it's just to make you think you should have bought those extras. But I can't think what they are, because it'd be fog lights and heated screen are hidden under there. Crank it into life. All very familiar. And immediately, because of the transaxle, they all did it. Every now and then you'll hear a sort of chatter from the gearbox. And it's a sort of worrying noise if you're not very mechanically minded, because it's just a slightly uneven idle, and it just makes the gears in the gearbox right just there sort of make a horrid rattling noise. But if you put your foot on the clutch, it all disappears. A wand of a gear lever, not, as you'll see in a moment, not the nicest of changes. And then weirdly you think, oh, you got dual control sort of heater controls, but it's temperature on this side and air mix on this side, so it's full cold I've got on there. Has the most peculiar sort of fan as well. It's 2-speed fan. They're very proud of their 2-speed fan, but if you do it once, you think, oh, that's noisy. Is there an even noisier position? No, it goes down to 1, so it goes 0 to 1 on the fans. Bizarre. But it's an Alfa, and it's got Italian electric, so I suppose we should expect it. Making up for it, I have a opening roof. Now this is the old style, which was just manual. God, I remember those with no electric sort of winding its way back. I had one in a Saab 900, just the same, and instantly opened the roof, which is good because there's no air conditioning in here. What else is there? Typical handbrake, and just the buttons, they all have a slightly flimsy feel to it. That is Alfa. Well, quite a lot of other cars actually of this period, Fiat, etc. They weren't robust, didn't seem to figure in the development cycle. That wasn't an issue. Though we had to wait for the Germans to invent robust sort of switchgear that would last many years. There we go. There's that rattle coming back. I'll put my foot on the clutch. Driving position needs a mention as well. Your legs are sort of closer to the pedal than they like, and it's a bit of a stretch of the wheel. I know from the Espada that actually it's more comfortable over a long distance than you would ever imagine. But initially when you get in, you think, well, that all feels a bit odd. As does trying to find first gear. There it is, over there. Right, what I'm going to do now, head out, warm the car up. This car needs a fair bit of warming up. Gearbox particularly likes a bit of warmth because it's hidden at the back and not next to the engine, doesn't warm up as quick. So that takes a little bit longer, so I'm going to head out onto some better roads, and you'll join me, I suppose, just as we're going into Burford. V6 goodness coming through already. Doesn't rev very high. Redline starts at, well, yeah, 5.7 it starts going a bit red, but I think the actual cutout comes just over 6, about 6.2. But it starts to get quite musical from 4,000 RPM onwards. And the other thing I've noticed on this car is it's really very well damped. And I checked the mileage, it's 27,000 miles this car, and it's from new, 27,000 miles. There's one guy who owned it for about 30 years before my friend bought it. And it sort of shows it's been looked after, and underneath there's evidence of new dampers and ball joints and things, so it all feels quite tight. What doesn't feel tight is the gear change. They're notorious for it, they just, I don't know, they wear as well, so it probably needs some new bushes in it. But there's, you have to just think and use the revs. And if I want to go from third to fourth, there's like a little wobble. It's like there's an extra chicane which isn't marked on the gear knob when it goes straight third to fourth. It's not like that in real life. There's a little chicane just as you go over the midpoint. Get used to it though. But you just have to think in your head, you can't rush the gear change. And it's all a bit pot luck of what gear you're going to get. But at least you get to listen to the V6. This isn't actually the standard wheel on this car. It's a very period Moralita. I think this was red once, but it's so old that it's sort of gone a sort of browny tan colour. Typical Pioneer stereo of the period in there. What I can't get over, it doesn't quite fit, so there's sort of bits covering up where the size of it should have been. I don't quite understand why Luigi didn't make the DIN slot the right size. There's no speakers in the front as well. There's a big bulge here, electric windows, so you just get where the winder goes in there. But yeah, speakers in the back. I suppose you've got a V6 to listen to. Big fuel tank as well, 75 litres I know. So I did actually weigh this car, as I was fascinated, you know, what sort of weight with this period of car. They just somehow made their cars way lighter. And the same with this one. It was 1150 kilos on my scales, and almost a 50-50 weight distribution because of the transaxle and the batteries in the back as well. So yeah, but it's not the quickest of cars. Well, I don't know, I'm slightly shocked when I saw the claimed performance of it, 8.1 to 60. Can't see anyone actually did that. They got 8.8 seconds at motor when they road tested it in the UK. And then a yawning 24.4 seconds to 100 miles an hour. That's sort of any diesel hatchback would do that. 24 seconds is pretty slow. Saab 900 turbo, I remember, was 20 seconds or thereabouts. But it did do a good top speed. They claim 127 miles an hour, and actually they got 132 miles an hour out of the press car around the Millbrook Bowl. Now I'm going to do my usual thing and just sort of hoof it up the hill here. I'm in third at the moment. I might just be brave and try second. A lot of heel and toe-in change in this, so I'm going to hit that at 30 miles an hour, and I'm already at 3.5 RPM in second. It's quite short geared. Oh, off we go. So yeah, not particularly quick, but it's only got 160 horsepower, it's 5,700 RPM, and then 157 pound-foot of torque at 4,000 RPM. It's what is termed an over square engine, so it's quite a short stroke wide bore, but it does sound good. It's not loud, it's just quality. Really nice sound. But but it's the handling which this car really scored at, as I'm going to take it down one of my favourite bits of road now. Right, let's go through here to where the compression is. Is it ground out? It's just on the edge, into third. It's slightly vague around the straight ahead, but once you've got into the bend, there's feel. Yeah, it's yeah, another A, just got a little bit of float coming through there. Yeah, it's got the balance, but it's very definitely a sort of road car. It has none of the sort of racer feel that some of today's cars have, and yet in its time it was really quite a successful racer. It won European Touring Car Championship 4 years on the trot. I think it was it 82 to 85, and then in the UK Andy Rouse became British Touring Car Champion in a GTV6, an Alfa GTV6. Even it did rallying as well, and Tour de Corse, I think it won its class Group A 4 years again on the trot. So yeah, it's got some pedigree. It's just from a different age. It's softer than today's super sports cars. The GT in its name is the clue. It's actually reasonably civilised behind the wheel once you've got used to the driving position. It soaks up bumps beautifully. You know, this was a period when cars had suspension travel, not crazy low ratio tyres. It's 195 60 15s on this car. Right, it's tighter bends coming up here. See what it feels like here. And obviously no ABS, but quite good brakes. Even it's got inboard brakes at the back. You wouldn't imagine it. Might just take a second. Yeah, plenty of roll around there. Point for the apex and power out. Oh. Yeah, it just hasn't got that punch that you expect from the GTV6 sort of name it's got. But you have to use the revs, and it's just softer. Yeah, steering is strange. They do mention it, don't they? Alfetta steering. It's just around the straight ahead. There's not a lot of action. You can turn the wheel, nothing's really going on. Right, I think it's time to summarise this car. What do we think about this 80s iconic Alfa? Well, if we go through the dislikes first, well, I'm afraid I have to agree with Car Magazine. Gear change is not my favourite at all. It's all a bit of a lottery. You get used to it, but it doesn't have that precision you expect from the spec sheet, the transaxle, the 5-speed gearbox. And then everything's a little flaky, shall we say, around the build quality. It seems to be the same sort of plastics as they used to make those cassette cases from. It's the same sort of plastic used in this Alfa. And I mentioned the steering before. It's just a bit odd around the straight ahead, and the seating position. I'm right into here. I'm almost headbutting the top of the windscreen, but I do have great visibility, so there's a trade-off there. The lights are much easier. It's just the character that engine gives it, and the looks, the crispness of the Giugiaro designed exterior. I mean, it still looks super neat today, and I love that it's the size that it is. It's reasonable space in here. I don't want to sit in the back, but there's reasonable space in here, and yet it's tiny exterior. It's a tiny narrow track, but yeah, just have a little concentration here. Let's go through my favourite bends. You just have to use that gearbox quite a lot. Fortunately, with the pedals you can heel and toe. Low power steering. You expect it to really power out of the revs, so I'm already past peak power. There's no more pull to pull me out of the corner. So really, just like Car Magazine said, this car is all about charisma, and that it has by the bucket load. There is something joyous seeing this car. It's a survivor. I can't believe how rare they are now. They all just basically disintegrated because they did what Alfas love best, and that's rusting into a little pile of ferrous oxide. But this one is a survivor, and that's great, and it's in the right colour. Engine feels healthy, the handling feels healthy, and it's been joyous to revisit one of my heroes from the 80s. So there you go, that's the Alfa GTV6 2.5 litre. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, well, please subscribe, please tick notifications, all that nonsense, because there'll be some more videos coming along very soon.